Hello and welcome. Just to begin with, catching up with yesterday, one of the comments had an additional couple of questions I missed. They weren't quite on the screen of the little phone, so I'll just add them now. It was with regards to finding a monastery, and I didn't notice, because it came at the end, so off screen, that you are in the USA, so in America. So I did state that I wasn't sure where you were, so that makes it clearer and easier for me to reply. So you say, in addition to the questions of yesterday, also, is there a difference between monasteries in the East and the West? I live in the States and am not sure where to start. I think there's less differential between East and West these days. It's more the differential with regards to Buddhism between Buddhist countries and other countries. Countries that aren't with the predominant religion being Buddhism, like Sri Lanka, Thailand and Myanmar, are mainly dominated by another religion. So the differentiation comes between those two, more so, because a country which is considered in the East, like Thailand, is also a very modern country these days. It does have, of course, its rural areas and outback, so to speak, but also going to Australia, which is, what is it? It's very far in the east, isn't it? It's as far east as we can go, apart from New Zealand. So this east-west divide is a little bit... Anyway, this is just terminology. What you're referring to is there in the USA, as opposed to coming, say, here to Sri Lanka, for example. There's a huge difference. You'll find that in non-Buddhist countries, the monasteries are less culturally influenced and more to the book. They're practicing from the Vinaya Pitaka, the Sutta Pitaka and Abhidharma, the Tipitaka, from the Pali Canon in the Theravada tradition. Whereas that is also the case with temples, as they're usually called, in Buddhist countries, with monks living there, which is what we refer to as monasteries. Whilst there is also that, there is also the addition of cultural influence, many local visitors coming to practice their devotional practices, make offerings, listen to sermons, as they even call them, as opposed to Dharma talks. And this, let's say, disturbance to your practice if you're from the West and you come from a meditation background. So with your particular case in mind, if you have monasteries that you can access within America, as I know you do, then they would be your first port of call, for sure. Then you go on to say, what meditation do you practice? Anapana meditation or vipassana? And then you put in brackets, body sensations scan. Okay, vipassana, that is, often how it may be described in vipassana named traditions. Named, I say there. They're like the Goenka tradition of vipassana retreats. Vipassana isn't a technique. It is a quality we develop, seeing clearly. Vipassana means to see clearly. The characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta, ultimately, through the observation of the body. Like I also said yesterday, we can observe these bodies, this fathom-length bag of skin and bones and all that goes on within it, and our minds, and learn everything we need to know about the Dharma. This is vipassana. This is also what they call insight meditation. This is actually seeing that clearly. But the technique itself is actually just sitting still, doing nothing, developing the quality of samadhi, the ability to observe, concentrate, focus, have your attention on just one thing, a meditation object, be it the breath or a mantra. Most easily the breath, and you refer to this anapana meditation. It's anapanasati is the correct term, which is mindfulness of the breath. So, and then you ask me, and what do you practice? So what do I practice and what do monasteries teach? Well, my practice, it was initiated with anapanasati, sitting still for a very long time with my awareness on the breath. And I still continue throughout my daily activities, each and every day, from the moment I wake to this day, with observation of the breath, mindfulness of the breath, anapanasati. That is my underlying technique or practice, if you want to call it that. But it is not a thing I'm doing. It is something that has become a natural development of my own practice of sati, samasati, mindfulness, to keep the mind calm, the body relaxed, and to maintain the power of concentration and focus that we develop while sitting still in formal meditation. People refer to it whilst on the cushion. I mean, I never have a cushion, never have, for meditation, so I avoid that term, but again, it's just terminology. But so whilst on the cushion, as you see, this thin piece of material is on a concrete floor. That's it for me. But whilst sitting here still, with just the development of samadhi, deep absorption in my meditation, I am then developing the mind so that it is more able to just peacefully and be at ease with maintaining mindfulness of the breath throughout all of my daily activities. That is my practice. So it's neither one nor the other. It is exactly, in fact, what the Buddha taught us to do. The Buddha wasn't running Vipassana courses, wasn't going out saying, hey, go and do some anapana. He was saying, take your meal, bhikkhus, and then go and find your day's abiding in a suitable place, under a tree, in an empty building, in a cave, in a hut, in the forest. Sit peacefully and observe. And a way to bring our observational skills into focus and to develop samadhi is to begin with observation of the breath, which is what the Anapanasati Sutta teaches us. So try and differentiate between these names and terms of techniques, because we are developing through the Noble Eightfold Path a foundation of sila, moral virtue, and then with right effort practicing mindfulness throughout all of our daily activities, from the moment we wake until the moment we fall asleep. And the way we can do this is by bringing our attention to the breath as quickly as possible after you wake, and maintaining that to the moment you fall asleep. When other things come along you bring your attention to, it isn't a distraction. You go to those things more easily, with more focus, with more concentration, because your mind hasn't been darting here, darting there, wandering here, wandering there, all over the place, with one thought after another, a chain reactions of thoughts throughout the day. More observation of what is actually going on. This is samasati, right mindfulness. And then continuing with the Noble Eightfold Path, at the end is samasamadhi, because when we sit in our formal meditation, this is what we are developing. Any monasteries that are teaching meditation will be teaching that I've just said. Monasteries will not be saying, hey, it's Vipassana time, or hey, it's Anapana time, or hey, it's body scanning time. Or maybe they'll have a little bit of metta time in the evening before, especially if they've got lay people coming in. But again, this should be a quality one develops. Metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. Yes, mindfulness, or loving kindness, compassion, joy for others, and equanimity. These are qualities we develop, not meditation techniques we do. This idea of radiating loving kindness to all is a lovely idea, and it helps bring about positive and wholesome qualities of mind. But I think I can sit here all day radiating enormous amounts of loving kindness to all beings, but without you witnessing that, me talking to you firsthand, or maybe the cat here, Rosie the cat, being present to receive that loving kindness by my presence, and nothing more than that, but knowing I'm of no threat, then it is really just going into the ether, isn't it? I don't know that it's possible to change people on the other side of the world. Now, there are many stories of this, and if that's so, it's great. But again, this isn't something you'll find in most monasteries as their core practice, especially in the America, where you're saying, in the USA, in the West, as we call it, in modern countries, in non-Buddhist countries, where they will be looking at the word of the Buddha and practicing in the way that he taught within a monastery environment and in accordance with their own bylaws, but mainly the abundance of rules set up in the Vinaya Pitaka. So that's a good start, finishing off from yesterday. And then I did mean to go through these comments and highlight the questions, but I didn't. So now I'm going to have to meander a little. Okay, I've mentioned I have a son. I'm laughing at myself here, not your question, because I'm not very. I don't never plan these things. You see, they're very spontaneous. Right, I've mentioned. So let's read it properly. I have a two-part question. You have mentioned you have a son. Do you not feel guilt or pain not being a part of his life any longer? What about your grandchildren? You must deal with this from time to time. Well, actually I have 3 sons, but they're adults, they're in their 30s, and I certainly don't have any guilt. We don't really talk of guilt so much in Buddhism, but we have these 2 words, hiri and ottappa, which is conscience and conscientiousness. Well, I have no conscience, negatively speaking. I have no bad feeling about living here, doing what I'm doing, with regards to the rest of my family, whom are doing what they're doing. Now, this is maybe where there's a bit of an East-West difference. Families perhaps in the West, in modern countries, non-Buddhist countries, compared to, say, India or here in Sri Lanka, maybe don't stick together for so long, maybe don't stay in the family home for so long. I'm not sure so much these days, but no, I mean, my children, my sons are grown up. I have 1 grandchild, maybe another on the way, I'm not sure. I think my grandchild is about 2 years old, but my children are in their 30s. They have their own lives and they're very happy, very content. If they were in difficulty, I hope they'd come to me at least for advice, even though I can't help them much in other respects. I hopefully could point them in the right direction to someone who could, and they know how to maybe get hold of me, as can anyone else, if that were the case. So I haven't abandoned them as such. The Buddha himself, he left his wife and very young child to go on and do this practice to become the Buddha. And likewise, wouldn't have had any remorse, guilt, and hiri and ottappa, conscience and conscientiousness, would have been free, in that he was practicing something for everyone's benefit, the world, in fact, for many millennia to come's benefit, and indeed also his immediate family in time, once he became the Buddha and was enlightened and able to bring them into the fold also. having established the Sangha. His mother was long dead, but his stepmother became a nun. His son became a monk. His father had likewise long since died then. But this all was to everybody's benefit. This practice of living as a monk is not any, well, it is considerably, it is the best job you can do. Now I'm obviously biased in that respect, but you are living by moral precepts that mean you are doing no harm to yourself or to others. And if your parents are living in that way, you will only be happy and content with the way they're living. They're also making no demands on you as children for their support. They have the support of the Sangha behind them, and the lay, so the body of monks and nuns, and the lay people, the body of lay men and lay women, to look after them. And this is a very important thing to consider. So no, I don't, and pain, certainly not. My son has visited me here. He also visited me, not in India, because it's difficult to go there for many reasons, but we met up in Nepal, my eldest son. My other son, on one occasion, couple of years ago now, when I visited England briefly for visa reasons and various things I had to sort out, I met up with him, and my then new grandchild, and the other son I don't really see much or hear much of anyway. So that's my family life. It's really no different for if I was working abroad as a parent, or as a child when a child goes off to university, as a son, because I have a mother and a sister too. I keep in touch with them as a long-distance relative would, just to, if there's a problem, an emergency, I might get to hear about it. But if, as they understand, there's not much I can do, probably not, unless it was very serious. So, what's the second part of the question? So I must deal with it from time to time. Well, nothing to deal with. Secondly, does one not create negative karma in abandoning their family and friends to live the life of a renunciant? So I think I've answered the second part of the question there, I hope, in the first part, because I didn't read ahead again. Is creating aversion to the objects of defilement the creation of more suffering, if aversion equals suffering? No, we don't create aversion to anything. We understand the cause of everything. So we understand we have greed. The nature of greed is desire, wanting what we have not got, not wanting what we have. That is also aversion, not wanting what we have, the situation as it is, wanting it to be otherwise. Understanding that is not aversion to it. It is knowing the reasons behind that defilement, and therefore being able, knowing those reasons, to treat the condition, to eradicate it. As with delusion, it isn't ignorance, it's having knowledge but not understanding it. So through this practice we develop wisdom. We come to understand through panya, wisdom, the characteristics of existence, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and that everything is out of our control. And through this understanding we are eradicating delusion. We're not creating aversion to delusion. And is there a more skillful way, by deeply seeing the impermanent nature of the object of defilement? Well, yes. That's what I just said. So, in fact, again, if I'd read on, you already answered the question. So, hopefully I've confirmed that your answer to your own question is correct there. Is this Thailand? Somewhere is. Is this Thailand? No, this is Sri Lanka, where I'm talking to you from now, and have been here for 10 months or so, 11 months, so nearly a year. Longest I've been anywhere in the last 5 years, the longest I've been anywhere in one place. And hope to stay, but Sri Lanka, not Thailand. Unless you're watching one of the old videos, which would have been India or Thailand. The next question is this the west of Scotland? Wow. And your name in the email address is that of one of my relatives and my own name. Well, not my own name. It says, this isn't your name necessarily, but your username is Alex Mason. So my grandfather's brother was called Alex Mason. And I do think they originate from Scotland at some point in my family tree. Anyway, is this the west of Scotland? No, it's not. It's the west coast of Sri Lanka. It couldn't be more different. I mean, Scotland is a very beautiful place that I'd love to visit, but I'm not sure how they feel about Buddhist monks there. We do have in the Ajahn Chah school of lineage a monastery just inside Scotland, just in the border. I've forgotten the name of it. So that would be an interesting place to visit one day, but I really plan not to do any more visiting or travelling. Not in this lifetime anyway. If I can just stay here, is better. I can just practice. Are there any animals that visit or that you are cautious about? Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. This isn't Sampabalapa, because you'll notice, I mean, the doors are open here, the windows are open, and they're not closed at night, and even the roof void's a bit open. I always like to sleep outside if I can, and when you can't, like this, without closed doors. This is part of my practice and in the spirit of the tradition in which I live. Not a necessity towards Buddhism at all, and perhaps not even wise, or certainly not most people's preference. As far as animals, we've got here, there's perhaps in this part of Sri Lanka where I am, on the west coast, being the coastline, there are no elephants or tigers, and I think even in the lagoons and what do you call those backwaters, there may be some crocodiles, but I don't think there are many. Of course, inland in Sri Lanka, there are a lot more of those sorts of wild jungle animals, because it is wild jungle. But here, not so much. In where I'm staying, there are a lot of snakes, but they seem to be very, like everywhere, timid. Unless you step on one, they're not going to bite you. Indoors, I have had a very large snake come in here once or maybe twice. But I had to rescue it from the cat as opposed to me being rescued from the snake. So I just got my broom, I have a soft broom, and I swept it out of the door and it quickly slithered away. It had seen the cat and gone into a sort of frozen motion, so it wasn't going to harm me. And at night time, things do come in. I know because I see the evidence they leave behind, their droppings, and things come in that, like soap, it seems, because I have a bar of soap in my washroom area. It's not really a room, an area, a tap on the wall basically, and a bucket, and on the ledge I put a bar of soap. And the rats, it's either rats or it's chipmunks, of which there are an abundance, lots of beautiful chipmunks running everywhere. And where I put my leftover fruit skins and any leftover food on the ground for them to eat, I think it attracts more. So you can probably see them sometimes out there running up and down these fallen trees and up and down the trees. So there's lots and lots of chipmunks. There's rats everywhere in the world. They're the ones that come in at night, but they don't go near you. There are two. They're like snakes. They're very timid. they'll come in and they'll find what they can. There's no food stored here overnight. Monks don't store food overnight. We're not allowed to. It also has very practical reasons. So you don't get cockroaches, you don't get ants, because there's nothing for them to eat here. But rats seem to like soap. So when the soap gets down to, as they do, a certain size, a small level, well, small enough for them to carry easily, they seem to take it away. So I never have to worry about what to do with that last bit of soap, putting them all together to make a bigger bar, if you know what I mean, because it seems the rats have some use for it, unless it's the chipmunks. I think it's rats, looking at the size of the teeth, quite big. The rats here are this sort of big, you see. I've seen them a few times. Other animals, there's mongoose. Now I think mongoose is the plural for mongooses. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's not mongoose, but there's lots of lovely mongooses, mongoose. There's monkeys, lots of monkeys, but I think you call them an army of monkeys, or a squad of monkeys, or a pack, or something like that. They come as a whole bunch often, and then they can cause a bit of havoc and shake the coconuts down. I'm surrounded by very tall palms laden with coconuts, also tall trees with papaya and also jackfruit. So occasionally they'll come and have a raid, and it's not really just to get those fruits, but they'll shake the trees, and those fruits, the coconuts, can fall, and that can be quite dangerous. Also, they're a valuable resource. Coconuts are used for literally everything here. So usually the locals will come out and shoo them off nicely, but shoo the monkeys off. So they're not here often, and I love to see it when they are, because they're so playful and they literally just jump from tree to tree, and we have that expression, the monkey mind, coming from that way that they behave, don't we? And I've made a little video of those monkeys when I was in the coconut groves of India a couple of years back now, and it's a wonderful thing to see. There's peacocks. There are obviously cats and dogs. That just goes without saying everywhere. There's some other things as well, I've forgotten now. Many beautiful birds of bright colours and lovely singing tunes and songs. So yeah, these in relation to Dharma are such a lesson when we're living in nature, to see the behavioural structure of these animals' societies, how they behave, interact, look after each other, and other than predators and predatees and this situation, all live very much in harmony. They have their territories, yes, and they have their need to eat. But other than that, there are no wars, there's no arguments, particularly playful arguments and fighting from time to time. But they all, even the dogs and the cats here, live in harmony with each other and all do their own thing. So as well as that, there's many lizards, not the big ones we had in Thailand, of which there's many videos on this channel of, but these little, they're generally little like that. And then a speciality of Sri Lanka, because I've not seen them elsewhere, are these, we call them water monitors. I don't know why we call them that, but they're these big lizards that live in water, and they range from anything like 2 to 3 meters long. I've seen them across the road, that big, halfway across the road, to the ones you've seen in the videos in the background that come up here, which are just about 1 foot or 2 feet long, that are these long kind of lizards with these forked tongues that shoot out and catch flies or something like that. So that's the wildlife of this part of the world, and it's conducive to the practice in this environment. And being cautious of them, well, I'm just cautious in my own activities to do no harm to others, and that way they will do no harm to you. So I'm not cautious in a fearful way of any of nature's creatures, because if I'm being careful not to harm them, I know they won't harm me, because I've lived in these environments for many, many years now. And that intention of no harm is what protects you also. What's the name of the village? Looks very nice. Yeah, I don't think it matters, but this and the there's a few questions. Where are you? How can we visit? Can I come and see you there? Yesterday was one, can I join you? So in answer to that question, if you go to the description of the channel page, there is my email address, and I can respond to anybody's inquiries, giving them the specifics, the address. I can also say you can find me on, Google Maps. If you look for English Buddhist Monk on Google Maps, it pinpoints my exact location, the name of the village and the town. The reason I don't say it or write in the comments that email address or the name of the place is because it gets me lots of junk mail, which I then have to go through junk mailing or whatever you do with it for a few days before it goes away again, whenever I air that information. I don't know how that happens, so I don't say it. It's not that I'm hiding. Anyone can and is welcome to visit. But I must warn you, this is not, it's a public place in that the villagers and the locals can wander in and out, and I don't require much in the way of privacy. It's an open house. I'm accommodated by them, and that's no problem. But there are no facilities for visiting tourists, so to speak, and there aren't many things around. There is a little restaurants around that are open during the tourist season, which is coming up. Other than that, the facilities are few and far between. So if you're coming a long way to visit me, which you'd be very welcome to do, make sure en route you find somewhere nearby where you can go and have a break, use the washrooms, restrooms, have a coffee, tea, something like this, something to eat, because I don't have those facilities to offer much in the way of hospitality. But I have all of my time that I can happily give you and listen to your questions and talk to you face to face about the Dharma, and also how you're getting on here if you're a visitor to Sri Lanka. But for people within Sri Lanka, they can find me quite easily. If you're coming to this, it's on the west coast place. I don't think there's any harm for me saying the name of the place, Bentota. You come to Bentota, you only need to ask more or less anyone, where is the English Buddhist monk, or just foreign monk. They'll point you in the right direction, because I go out every day on Pindapata and everybody knows me. So that's the name of it. That's where I am. You can see it on Google Maps, not only where I live exactly, but the surrounding areas, or on Google Earth. It's not a renowned tourist place, but it's an aspiring to be a tourist place. But I think it's at the upper end of the holiday market, more perhaps the more senior holiday makers or honeymooners would come to some of the hotels and accommodation here, which are quite luxurious and probably are expensive. But there's Sri Lanka's not a huge country, and if you're visiting Sri Lanka, you can tour around all of it in really no time at all, which is very worth doing, I think, if you're a tourist. But me personally, that's not what I do. So that's generally where I am. Questions all answered in one go. Beautiful flowers. Thank you for sharing. Did you have to find a place yourself, or did the monastery send you there? So no, I asked permission of my monastery to come to Sri Lanka, and found this place myself, but not so much found it. I found a location where I wanted to be, and then hung around for a few days, hoping really to sleep outside, but it was still raining, so someone provided me with accommodation temporarily, and then a little more permanently. And then when that became a little less suitable, for my practice, the first place you may remember when I arrived here was right on the busy main road with those buses thundering by all of the time, which was okay. The noise doesn't bother me, but we couldn't have conversations. I couldn't speak very easily to people coming, especially, well, my hearing's not fantastic, but old people with hard of hearing, you know, a conversation was very difficult, especially with the language barrier. So this is more peaceful and conducive to the practice, there's more nature. But I hung around this area for a couple of days and planned actually to live outside. But they're not really keen on monks living outside here, they want to look after you. So they offered me this place, and this was an old run-down empty building. They wanted to do it up very nicely, but I rather asked them to hurry up and said, look, anything I can do, or people supporting me here in this via this channel could do to help, and because I didn't want them to, you know, go into undue expense. So we raised a very small amount of money that was necessary to get this place finished to a very basic standard, which is all I need, and that's how I came to be here. So that's how I got here, and the way I found it was just really how I found most places where I've ended up staying. I've just looked on Google Maps, Google Earth, for places that are not tourist places, not commonly sought out places to visit, because I don't want too many people that are holidaying around. I want to be in somewhere a little bit of more solitude. But as the Buddha teaches us, within walking distance of a village or a town where one can go on Pindapata each day, arms around, to collect food, and other than that, peaceful environment. And I often choose coastal areas because although the mountains and the forests and jungles inland with the waterfalls and rivers are all very romantic and picturesque, you have a lot more to deal with there in terms of the wild animals and the diseases, the mosquitoes and things which carry dengue and malaria. On the coast you don't have dengue and malaria very often, it's very rare. And as I don't use mosquito nets or much in the way of protection of that nature, I like to be very natural, and I've found living on the coast is the easiest place to live that way. Living outside also on the coast I've always found very conducive to monastic living, as long as it's empty beaches and not tourist-filled beaches with bars or something like that. But beaches here are not like that, not between specific areas or private resorts anyway. So beaches where you can use the sea for bathing, you know, keeping clean and washing robes, even though it's salty. I've managed to do that for many years in India and in the UK even. The coastline is a very practical place to live. So I plan on going to Sri Lanka soon. That's good for you. And information you can kindly share to stay physically protected and safe. Heat, weather, insects, animals, shelter, jungle, etc. Well, I've mentioned a bit about it, but I would suggest you Google that sort of thing. There's so much advice online about tourism in Sri Lanka, but go to the official sources. So Sri Lanka tourism, or your own government will give you advisories. So our British government gives us advisories on any country you're planning to visit. But also, with caution, if you're overly cautious, take absolute note of those advisories. But if you're less risk averse, then don't take them too seriously, because I mean at the moment my advisories are telling me not to go to many places that I see no problem with going, or I'm even at the moment, for various reasons. So often they'll take a political thing going on in one part of the country that really will not affect you wherever you might be going. So all of that is available online. And as far as vaccinations and all of that concerned, I'm the last person to ask, because I've never had a vaccination. I've had a tetanus if I've had an accident. Other than that, I think there was, I had to have the the COVID ones, because I had to leave, I wasn't able to travel. I had to leave India when my visa ran out, and the only way I could leave the country, get on a plane, was to have the vaccination. So I had to go through the process of having those vaccinations. I wouldn't have bothered out of choice, but I did. And other than that, I've never had any. But that's again only for the less risk averse. I think you go to your natural GP, your doctor, or look online, and it'll tell you what you need for wherever you're going. There's a whole list of vaccinations I think you're supposed to have if you come to Sri Lanka, but I've maybe become immune to most of those things, having lived in India for some time without them. So I think maybe, let's see if there's one more, not too long. Do we have to take all the precepts to gain enlightenment? Okay, so you don't have to, we don't take the, yes, I suppose there is the ceremony of taking precepts. So the 5 precepts are: we refrain from killing, refrain from stealing, refrain from sexual misconduct, refrain from lying, and we refrain from taking intoxicants. That is anything that will affect our mindfulness and maybe lead to carelessness and the breaking of the 4 other precepts. Do you have to refrain from all of those 5 things to become enlightened? Yes. Without the basis of sila, so if you cannot refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or taking of intoxicants, you will not develop samadhi to enter jhanas, to become enlightened, even by way of any amount of offering dana, of the activities of good karma. If you're counteracting any of that through breaking any of those precepts, you are in effect creating more negative karma than positive. So you cannot becoming enlightened is seeing clearly, awakened. Becoming awakened, it means, Buddha means awakened one. If you are awakened and enlightened, you would see no benefit, and in fact only the detriment of breaking any of those 5 precepts. So an enlightened being is unable to break those precepts. Even the first stage of enlightenment, sotapanna, to attain to sotapanna, and once having attained to sotapanna, where in effect you're free from rebirth into any other realm than the human realm, and it is said no more than 7 rebirths into the human realm before you can attain to parinibbana. Maybe you have some old karma to be used up, burnt up through practice in the next 6 or 7 lives before you can attain to parinibbana. But you will not attain to sotapanna without being unable to break those 5 precepts. So it's not a case of do you have to take them to become enlightened. You will not become enlightened without having abided by them in the first place. So that's the point. And just finally, if every event happens because of karma, so where and how does karma start? So karma does not start. Karma is action of body, speech and mind, which is the cause of the causes and conditions for what happens next. So the results of that karma in Pali is vipaka. So as far as where did everything start, the beginning of the universe, the beginning of life, the beginning of whatever the universe is in, the Buddha said there is no point in trying to get to the bottom of that, to work it out. You can't prove it, you can't ascertain it within this life or many lifetimes without exploding your head. It's literally said that, your head splitting apart. So don't worry too much about it. But no, if you do something bad now, it's going to have consequences. You'll reap what you sow. It's quite simple. Don't make it complicated. Karma is that simple. You reap what you say. So do unto others what you expect to be done to yourself. Love your neighbour, because then they'll love you. This is basic common sense, isn't it? It's nothing hard to understand. So don't make it hard to understand. That's the beauty of Dharma. It's natural, basic simplicity and applicability to all of our everyday lives and how we live. So on that note, we'll speak again soon. Until then, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu. Oh, and here comes Rosie. Maybe not. She knows I finished though.